Hi everyone, Colby Wright here. Wanted to record what I hope is a short and efficient video to try to help you with just a couple of basic skills. One of the things I want us to do more of in the class this semester is I want us to get more comfortable using the FRED add-in in order to scrape the web and get macroeconomic data into Excel. So I want to expose you to the FRED add-in. I want to show you how you can actually get data into Excel very quickly and efficiently. But I also want to show you how to define a range using the offset function to turn it into a dynamic range so that when you update data in the future, you don't have to go back in and update all of your formulas. But let's launch by first off just understanding how to get the FRED add-in. The simplest thing is to just go to Google, type in FRED add-in Excel, hit the enter button, and the very first website that pops up is where you need to go. Over here, you just need to choose what your operating system is, agree to the terms, click the download now button. On most machines, once it downloads, if you just click that downloaded file, it's going to open up Excel. So Excel has opened up, and this is not uncommon. For whatever reason, it's not recognizing the add-in. That's not a problem. All you need to do is go to the File tab, go down to Options. Under Options, select the Add-ins option. And then down here at the bottom, you need to go where you can manage the add-ins. So go to that. You can see the FRED add-in is there, but for some reason it's not being recognized. No problem. Just unclick it, click OK, and then go right back through that exact same process and click again. So File, Options, Add-ins, Manage the add-ins, click on the FRED add-in, click OK, and now you can see up at the top we have the FRED tab. This is a very powerful add-in. Let me show you just one or two things that you can do with the FRED add-in, then I'll introduce you to the offset function and how to name a range. Let me just give you one example here. What if I want to look at discouraged workers? So I might go to the Browse Popular Data Releases. This is under the Household Survey. You can see this has the civilian non-institutional population. It's got the civilian labor force. This is where all the employment and unemployment is. But down here at the bottom, you can see discouraged workers. These are basically people who are unemployed and they've checked themselves out of the civilian labor force. So they're unemployed and not even looking for work. So we've clicked on that. It grabs the FRED code. Then when we say get FRED data, it's actually going to go and scrape the web, and it's going to pull in all of the discouraged worker data going back to 1994 on a monthly basis. Now there's a lot of things you can do with this. You can change it from monthly to annual simply by changing the M to an A and then clicking the update data button. It'll take a few minutes to think, but there it is. I'm going to turn it back to monthly, but I'm not going to have it go back as far as we did. I'm only going to have it go back to the year 2000. I'm going to update the FRED data. So, and you can get so much data out here. Just for example, you can get all this GDP data. You can get real GDP. You can get nominal GDP. You can get consumption. You can get investment. You can get net exports. You can get government spending. You can get all sorts of interest rates. You can get mortgage rates down here at the bottom. You can get 10-year treasuries. So many good data sets that are available literally with just a couple clicks of your mouse. Very powerful tool. Saves you an enormous amount of time. If you didn't have the FRED add-in, you'd have to go to all of these individual websites. It would be a very laborious, arduous process, but because of the FRED add-in, you can do it very quickly and very expeditiously. So then you can do something like this. You can go ahead and insert a graph. So maybe we would just want to do a simple bar chart. I'm going to go ahead and reset this thing. So I'm going to select data and I'm going to remove that and reset it. So let's call this discouraged workers, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight all the data right here down to the end. Click OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and highlight the dates for the x-axis, again down to the end. Click OK, click OK. Come up to the top of our spreadsheet here, and I'm actually going to move this to another tab just to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to see. And this is a really cool data set, right? I mean, you can see the financial crisis of 2008 playing out right before your eyes. And in fact, I would argue this is a cleaner picture of the true impact of the financial crisis. And the reason that I say that is if we paired this up with a picture of GDP, you would see GDP decline sharply at the end of 2008 and early 2009, but you would see it start to recover in 2010. But what this graph shows you is that even in 2010, even into 2011, even when GDP was recovering, we still had a ton of people who were not re-entering the workforce. It really was a prolonged, painful economic downturn. Well, okay, that's the basics of the Fred add-in. And again, you can get all sorts of data, but one of the things I wanted to show you is how to name a dynamic range so that, for instance, right now we only have discouraged worker data going through August of 2017. Well, what happens when the update comes out and we have the September data for discouraged workers? You don't want to have to go in and update your charts by, right-clicking, select data. Now I got to edit this. Now I got to go in and I got to change the data range. You don't want to have to do that. So I want to show you a way to name ranges that are dynamic so that the minute you update your data, your charts are automatically going to update. So I'm actually going to start over with a brand new spreadsheet. And to show you this, I want to introduce you to the offset function. So I'm just going to create a couple data sets here. So here are some data sets. What the offset function does is it allows you to identify a range of cells. So let me just give you a quick demonstration here. So right here, I might do the sum, but instead of summing this, which you could do it that way, right? But the problem is, now if you add another cell, you have to go back in and update your formulas, right? You have to turn that from D5 into D6. That's a pain. We don't want to have to do that. What if we could structure our Excel spreadsheet such that any time a data set gets updated, it's automatically captured in our formulas? So that's what we want to try to do. But in order to do that, I got to introduce you to the offset function. So watch. Here's how offset works. You could do sum, and instead of just highlighting the range, now I'm going to use this offset function. And what the offset function does is it asks you to identify the range by first off saying, tell me where to start. So I'm going to tell Excel, start right there. Then Excel asks me, how many rows down do you want me to move before I actually capture the range? And in this case, I don't want it to move down. I want it to just start right there. I want it to anchor right there. So I don't want it to drop down any rows. Then it asks me, well, do you want me to move to the right any columns before I start identifying the range? And I don't right now. I just want it to start right there. Then the next question is, it says, okay, how many cells do you want in terms of height? So how many rows do you want included in this range? Well, I want 3 right now, and I'll show you how to make an update later. It says, okay, how wide do you want the data range? Well, right now I just want it to be 1 column wide. So there's my offset function, and you'll see that that's going to give me the same result as this sum function did. Now, just because I want you to understand the offset function, I'm going to show you one way to change it. So what if I wanted to do the sum of this data set right here on the right? Well, I could still do sum. I could still do offset. I could actually start there. I could tell it, okay, don't move down any rows before you start capturing the data set, but I do want you to move over 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So now what's going to happen is Excel is going to move over 4 columns before it starts capturing the range. Again, I want it to be 3 rows high and 1 column wide. If I do that, you can see that now the offset function is capturing this range. Okay, so that's an introduction to the offset function. But what if I want to add a number? See, still, if I add a number to my data set, this isn't changing. I want that sum function to capture that too, but it's not doing it. Here's how we can change this. Again, I'm going to go sum, offset, start right there. I don't want you to move down, and I don't want you to move to the right. But now when it asks me, how many rows do you want in this data set? I'm going to use the count all function. And I'm going to highlight that entire column. So let's think about this. Excel is asking me how many rows do I want in this data set? And the answer that I've given it is count everything that's in this column. And however many cells you see that have content in this column, that's the height that I want. So right now it's going to look at this column and it's going to say, well, there's 3 cells, so I'm going to make it a height of 3. But if I add another data point right there, Excel is going to count all of those cells and it's going to see that 4 cells have content, and now it's going to make it a height of 4. Then it's going to ask me how wide do I want it. Well, in this case, I still just want it 1 column wide. Okay, now you can see it's still giving me an 8, but here's the magic. Now when I type in a 3 right here, do you see how it automatically updates the sum function? Now if I add a 4, it updates it. If I add a 2, it updates it. So this offset function gives you the power to define dynamic ranges so that if you have a data set and you do a whole bunch of formulas, as long as you link it up correctly, you can update the data set and you don't have to touch the formulas because they're going to capture it. So now, using the offset function, we're going to go back to our Fred add-in and we're going to define a dynamic range using the offset function. So here we are, back in our Fred add-in Excel file, discouraged workers, and I'm going to define 2 ranges. So I'm going to put my cursor here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say let's define a name. And I'm going to call this particular range just the dates. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, okay, let's use the offset function. I want you to start right there. Don't move down. Don't move to the right. Just stay anchored right there. But now here's the key. How many rows do we want in this data set? What's the height? Well, we're going to do the same trick. We're going to have it count. We're going to have it count everything. We're going to have it count everything in that column. But there's a problem. There's some content in these first few cells that don't really matter. So the problem is Excel is going to count everything, but we want it to ignore those first few cells, specifically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what we're going to tell Excel is count all of the cells in this column and then subtract 7, and that's the height of the data set that we want. Lastly, we only want it to be 1 column wide. Then we're going to close it up. We're also going to name this data range. So again, I'm going to right click, define the name. I'm just going to call it discouraged workers. That's the name. Again, we're going to use the offset function. Start there. Don't move down. Don't move to the right. Count everything in this column except 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks like it's in the B column, but it's actually not. Those 2 things are both leaking over from the A column. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns that have content that we want to ignore. And again, we want it to be 1 column wide. Now what we can do is we can go back in and we can insert the function again, insert this column chart, a bar chart. I'm going to select data, but there's one more trick here that you have to be aware of. So again, we're going to call this discouraged workers. Now you have to do this. You have to say what tab it's on. This is on sheet 1, and you have to do exclamation mark. And the name of the data range is discouraged workers. That's all you need to do. And you can see it's updated. Now we're going to go in and do the exact same thing for the x-axis. Again, we have to do sheet 1 exclamation mark. Now we're going to do dates. Click OK. Again, I'm going to send it to its own tab. And I'm going to change the style just so we don't get confused. So why don't we do something like, let's do that. Okay? But what I want to show you is, since we have defined both the dates data range and the discouraged workers data range, since we defined both of those ranges using the offset function, they are now dynamic. So what we should be able to do is come down to the very bottom, add the next data set, and this chart should automatically update. So let's try it. Let's go 9/1/2017, and I'm going to put in a big number just to see if it actually will update. So I'm going to put in 1,500 here. Page up, and I want you to notice right here, can everybody see it's updated? Let's put in a couple more just to make sure we're right. Let's do 10/1/2017. I'm going to drop it down to 1,000. Let's do 11/1/2017. I'm going to drop it back down to 500. Let's do 12/1/2017. And I'm going to take it back up to 1,500. So we're going to go back to our chart, and can everybody see? As we update the data, those named ranges that we defined using the offset function that we made dynamic ranges are automatically updating. Well, look, that's all I want to show you today. I want to show you how to scrape data from the Fred add-in, and I wanted to show you how to define dynamic ranges. So then think about it. In the future, if you ever want to know about discouraged workers, all you have to do is come back here and just click at the very top. You just have to click the Update Fred Data button, and you do that, and it's automatically going to pull in the latest data, and your chart will automatically update when you do that. That's it. Hope it was helpful. Thanks for listening and watching.